Hello, friends. Welcome to A Little Room for Healing, where we aim to create a little more room in the world for authentic connection, insightful healing, and a deeper understanding of our hearts, ourselves, and each other through honest conversation. My name is Joel. I'm a Reiki and 13th Octave Laho Chi practitioner, a facilitator for deep healing, and your host. On today's episode, I delve into my pattern of fantasy relationships. I share in detail what they are and how they affected me. I describe the mechanism I discovered when I chose to explore the cause of these relationships, which ultimately led me to the truth of why I do it. Then I talk about the path to healing them and my determination to face my fear of rejection and healthy romantic relationships. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful journey. Come on in. Hello, friends, and welcome to another solo episode of mine on A Little Room for Healing. Today, I am sitting in my brother's house in Portland, Oregon. He is out of the country, and I am taking care of his dog, Tilly, for the next couple weeks. And it's been a fun little experience. He and his wife have gone on a little trip, and I am the king of the castle of their house for a little bit here, and it gives me plenty of time to contemplate and to think about things and to express them with you. And today, my desire is to talk about fantasy relationships, and specifically, my relationship to fantasy relationships, my experience with fantasy relationships, how it has played out in my life, how it has affected me, and how I looked into why it was happening, dissected the patterns that I was in, and then how I began to implement changes to not fall into fantasy relationships anymore, or at least to be with them in a way that they were held with love and not fear. And in that sense, they have begun to dissolve and dissipate. So first, let me tell you a little bit about what fantasy relationship means to me and what it is in regards to my life. A fantasy relationship to me is not just a crush on someone. It's not just I think that person's cool, and I have feelings for them and I want to get to know them. That's all in the fantasy relationship. But my particular crushes, quote unquote crushes in fantasy relationships, go a bit deeper and a bit farther, where I would play out basically a relationship with this person in my head and would give the relationship this life. It was really this biosphere of being imaginarily held by someone and seen by someone in the most perfect way that I would then attribute them to being perfect. I would think this person is my soulmate. They are perfect for me. They know exactly how to treat me. They're exactly what I need to fill this hole that I was feeling in my life, and that I so desperately wanted someone else to fix or heal or take away from me or fill. Any of the words that you can possibly think of to remove
an emptiness that I was feeling. And this is interesting. I think about that word emptiness that it just came out about that. It feels like an emptiness, but really it's a pain, it's a hurt, it's a trauma that I was hoping to get removed by someone else. Now that I say that out loud, it's a very fitting thing for me to do uh, regarding, I mean, uh, I'm sure that we've all done that in some way, shape, or form. And this me saying it out loud reminds me of the religious doctrine of you need something outside of you. You need Jesus Christ outside of you to save you and to take away your sins. Really, anyway, that I don't want to go down that road, but that's really interesting that is something that I was doing my whole life in regards to romantic relationships as well, and in regards to the pain I was feeling and the loneliness I was feeling. So I would then build up, and this would happen over months of time, where I would latch on. I would get this big emotional rush when I met someone, and this really intense feelings. Like it was like you think, oh, that person gives me the butterflies, but this is like butterflies times 100, and my body would go into this state of euphoric connection, energetic connection with this person, where I would automatically, in the moments of this feeling come on, being register in my brain and decide that they were the person for me, and that I was going to be in a relationship with them. But I would never approach them and ask them out, and I would never tell them that I was interested in them in that way. I would keep it secret because I have this deep fear of rejection and this deep fear of relationships. I would only tell myself I had a deep fear of rejection. It was really hard for me to come to terms with I had a deep fear of relationships as well. And I don't even know if that's particularly true the more I got into it and the more I realized what was going on. Oh, so then I would spin out of control for months, and there would be random interactions with this person too, and I would sometimes hang out with them and it would be awesome and we'd have this amazing experience, amazing hangout, and I would think, oh, it's gonna happen, this is real. And then there would be times when I would fumble and stumble over my words and get really childlike and get really embarrassed and shy and feel really inadequate when I was around them. And then I would go into this spin out of, oh my God, then why would anybody like that ever like me? I'm worthless. I don't deserve them anyway. But if they could only see past that and see who I really was, then we could be together forever, and it would be this beautiful, out of the movies romance. And then until finally I would spin out so much that it was like, if I don't say something to them, I'm going to lose my mind, and I need to know if it could be real or not. So then I would finally approach them, and I would let them know how I felt in a very awkward way, and the result is always the same. Oh, I'm not interested in you that way, or we're just friends, or I'm so sorry, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, but you're a really great guy and you're a really nice guy and you're such a safe person to be around. And I would get all these responses, and then I would go through this fake breakup with them after I had this really intense fantasy relationship with them. I would go through this really intense fake breakup with them where I'd have to mourn the loss of this relationship. I'd go through what I did wrong, what did I say wrong, all those things that one might go through if they were in a real relationship that broke up. And this is my pattern. This is the pattern that I've been in. And then finally, after I worked through the breakup, I would be released and be at peace for a while until the next woman or girl, depending on what age I was in my life, would come into my life that I would get this explosion of butterfly feelings for, and then the cycle would start again. And now this isn't to say that I've never had an actual physical real relationship in my life. I have had a few, and I must say that none of them have been healthy or truly communicative or respectful or non-people pleasing on my end. I've actually, all of my adult relationships, I've ended up being cheated on in some way, shape, or form, and that's how they ended. And I wasn't the greatest in those relationships either. I wasn't communicative. I didn't know how to talk about my emotions. I didn't know how to hold my emotions. I was so afraid of rejection that I would step over boundaries. I wouldn't even make boundaries. I didn't know how to make boundaries in these relationships, and I would step over myself, and I would people please, and I would do anything that I thought would help them feel good about being in the relationship. And it was just a recipe for disaster, and I would be manipulated and used and cheated on ultimately, instead of just being told that they didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. And it was really painful cycle. So my real ones ended up in more hurt than my fantasy ones. So I opted to stay. I kept opting for fantasy, unless some of those real ones, it's just like it happened so quickly that we were suddenly in a relationship that there was no time for me to even fantasize. So I always thought that that's how I needed to be in a relationship, get into a relationship, is it just happened really fast, and there was no time of getting to know each other before being in a relationship, or there was no really time of just dating. It was just like we went on a few dates and all of a sudden, boom, it was a full-fledged relationship, which I don't feel is the right way for me to go about beginning a relationship anymore. And I'll get to that. And so this pattern all started when I was, I believe, 7 years old was the first crush fantasy relationship I ever had with a person. And it was in Woodburn, Indiana, smallest city in Indiana. By the way, it has like just enough population to be considered a city, but it still has this super small town feel. It's like a little farm town in the middle of the country, about 35 minutes outside of Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I ended up moving to when I was 9. And I started getting this fantasy relationship with this girl named Kara Moore, who was in my class. We were in first, second grade. And it was those 2 years, 7 years old and 8 years old I was those years. And she lived a few blocks away, and I remember I would ride my bike by her house and imagine her getting on her bike and coming out to meet me and ride off to the park together, where we would hang out all day. And there's just this feeling of euphoria and acceptance and appreciation that I was getting, and being seen. I think that's the biggest thing in this whole fantasy relationship thing, is the feeling of being seen by someone. And you might hear Tilly in the background. So yeah, I just let Tilly out. The feeling of being seen is probably the biggest component of the fantasy relationships. And so, yeah, Kara Moore. And then I don't even know how that ended, but right at the last, right in the last few months of being in Woodburn, I remember it shifting to a girl named Jill Malfate, and then we moved. We moved after that year to Fort Wayne, Indiana. My dad he was principal of Woodburn Lutheran Elementary in Woodburn, and then got a call to be the principal at St. Peter's Lutheran School in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he took it. And so our family moved there when I was about to go into third grade. And I remember staying in my room nights in Fort Wayne, thinking about Jill Malfate, listening to Hold On to the Nights by Richard Marx, and singing it so loudly and crying while I sang it, just thinking about this lost love, that I'm never going to find love again. And I have to remember this. I was 9 years old when this was happening. I always thought I'm just such a romantic. Really interesting how even just saying that out loud and seeing the actual trauma that was involved with all of this, and how I conflated trauma with being romantic. Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, it carried on like this for the rest of my life, basically, except for like when those, even when I was in a real relationship, and it felt like a fantasy relationship, except I was actually getting physical touch and having conversations with people. My longest one was from 4th grade to 8th grade with a girl named Kelly O'Connor. Oh man, did I have it bad for that person for so long. So as this kept going on in my life, and I kept getting, and then any time I had a real relationship, I kept getting hurt. By the time I was starting to heal, this was one of the major components of why I wanted to heal. I was so tired of the deep pain I was feeling of being alone, or being in my relationships, being hurt by them, cheated on by them. And I was like, why do I keep calling this into my life? I never want to feel this again. And I started to work on that. And that was like 11 years ago when I began that journey. And it wasn't until a year and a half ago that I was finally able to get to the depths of why this was happening. Now, my whole life, I was blaming my inability to be in a relationship, or my fear of relationship, or the reason I was in fantasy relationships on my urethra trauma. Having a trauma in a sexual organ is really intense and can bring a lot of shame on you and a lot of inadequacy wound. And that's a lot of what I experienced throughout my life. So I always attributed to that. And there was some of that in there. There's definitely that was part of the burden that I was carrying, and the trauma that I was carrying in regards to these experiences. But it wasn't the whole answer. And then once I started working through that trauma enough, I started seeing that it wasn't all that. And a little over a year and a half ago, I had the experience of seeing for the first time this 6-year-old child in me that was deeply afraid and felt deeply unseen. And I started to be with him. I started to approach him. And how I did that was I would imagine myself sitting on a stoop, and he would be playing in the sidewalk or in the yard or in somewhere at a distance. And I remember imagining just sitting on the stoop and letting him know energetically that I was here for him, and that at any time he could come talk to me or share with me or sit next to me, even if it's just sit in silence, sit next to me, and I would be there for him. So I started imagining this over and over again, uh, until he started talking to me. He started sharing with me. And that's when it all started opening up. And around that same time, in December of 2022, I met a woman who gave me those big explosion butterfly feelings. And the pattern began again. I started going down my fantasy relationship with her. I tried really hard not to. I asked her if she wanted to get tea with me. We went and had tea. I didn't say that it was I always say in like ambiguity. You want to get tea? You want to hang out? I never say I want to take you on a date. I never express immediately that I'm interested in, because I'm so scared of like the rejection. But I want to get them to hang out with me. Oh, and I see the manipulation in that right now. Wow, that's really intense. That's okay. I can be with that, and I will explore that. I'm not going to explore that right now. I'm going to explore that at another time. And I was trying so hard to not go down the path. I was like, I can do this. I can be with the fact that I like this person and not go down the fantasy relationship path. But lo and behold, it happened, and it took me over. And this was the most intense fantasy relationship that I had ever gone down. It was really uncomfortable. I was in the state of anxiety the whole time, stressing out, having a hard time sleeping, really anxious, like in my chest, in my heart. Wanted so badly to know what she was thinking and if we could be together. She was in a relationship at the time, but she said that this relationship was ending. And that was just informing me about her life. Like, she was just telling me about her life. And I read it as, oh, she's interested in me. And so I played up this whole, she's going to break up with this person, we're going to get together, fantasy world, and how awesome I was going to treat her and how awesome she was going to treat me. And it got so intense, and the anxiety was so high. And I wanted so badly to tell her, but I didn't want to press the issue while she was still in a relationship. So I had this other boundary that I was fighting up against, and I couldn't break through any of it. And the anxiety got so bad that I finally sat back and said, I need to figure out what's going on here. What is the mechanism that's causing me to go into these fantasy relationships, and where does it stem from, and how can I dismantle it? How can I break it down? And so I never do this ever again. And I took a deep dive, and that's when I started seeing this mechanism, which was on the far right, there was Fantasy Town. And on the far left, there was Worthless Town. And in the middle, there was Real Town. And I was connected to Real Town by this string, but I was never in Real Town. I would jump from Fantasy Town over Real Town into Worthless Town. And I would spend time over there, and I would be in the depths of despair, and I'm unworthy, and I'm inadequate. And then I would go into this blissful state of, oh, this fantasy relationship is so beautiful. It's so real. It's so healthy. Everything's wonderful. I'm overcome with love and acceptance and being seen. And occasionally when I jumped over Real Town, I would actually get a glimpse of Real Town. And where the reality is, I don't know this person. We're not in a relationship. And also, I'm not worthless. I'm actually, like, there's something doesn't seem right about the fact that I keep saying that I'm worthless and inadequate. but it would be such a fleeting moment, and I'd only get a glimpse. And then I decided one day, I need to know what's going on in Real Town. I need to go in there and explore the world of Real Town. What is happening in there? So I forced myself out of Fantasy Town and into Real Town. And what I found in there was eye-opening, to say the least. Real Town is so uncomfortable. There was so much discomfort in Real Town that stemmed back to, there was fear and anxiety and yearning and longing and loneliness. And the more I looked at what was causing these, the more I sifted through, I came to my 6-year-old kid inside of me. And I was able to be with him. And I saw this wounded, scared, lonely child in so much pain because of his urethra, because of, I mean, he didn't even know this at the time, but I can see it now as the adult looking back at him, because of the religious trauma. And in those two things, not being seen. He was not seen in his urethra trauma. Nobody knew about it until he was 23, till I was 23. And I kept it hidden because I had so much shame about it. And also, nobody was tuning into me to see that there was something wrong with me. And then there was the religious trauma where I wasn't being seen as a human that was worth something on his own. I was seen as I had to be something for the church. I had to be a little, what it felt like at the time when I was looking at it was this little Christian doll that I was just being dressed up and taken to this place that I had no interest in being at, but I had to do. And then I was being told all these things that I had no interest in hearing, but I had to hear. And then the more and more I heard it, the less and less I felt seen. And the less, and adding that not being seen to the not being seen with my urethra trauma. And there you have this kid who just wanted to escape reality, escape Real Town, and go into fantasy world. And that's what happened when he was 7. And he started doing fantasy relationships and started pretending that he was in a place, in a world where he was completely seen and completely held by someone, and who would love him unconditionally for being him, and all his pain and all his fear. Even though that stuff didn't exist in the fantasy town, all that stuff was gone. It was just completely dissolved, and it was just love and acceptance and sharing and honesty. It's amazing that we as children can develop this mechanism due to the pain that we're in. It just is so intense that our systems are able to conjure up this kind of dissociative practice to escape the severely terrifying, damaging pain that we're in. Wow, it's incredible. And then to hold on to that mechanism for our whole lives until we finally take a beat to look at what's going on as adults, where we can actually go back and be with these children of ours, our inner children, and give them what they needed. So I was looking at adult Joel now is looking at a 6-year-old kid and seeing all this pain and seeing that while there was love coming from his mom, to him. It wasn't the love that he was needing, which was to be seen in his pain and to be seen as him, as a whole Joel who didn't need religion, didn't want religion, and also was in extreme pain because of the urethra. He was not being seen in that. So the mechanism was then to seek out a person, female person, who could give him that. And that's when I realized that my fantasy world was due to a mother wound, that I was seeking out over and over again a female to see me fully and to fill that hole that I wasn't being filled by my mother at the time. And I had to begin to offer that to my kid myself and let him know that I see him and let him know that it's okay, that whoever he is and however he's feeling and whatever he's experiencing is okay, and that I see it and I accept it and I'm holding it and I'm there with him in it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing and if you are feeling shame, it's okay, and I'm here with you in that. And if you're feeling fear, it's okay. And if you're feeling anxiety, and if you want to go run and hide, it's okay. I'm holding you in that, and I see that that's what you want, and I want you to know that I'll go hide with you if you want me to go hide with you. I'll wait till you're done hiding to come back to explore more. I'll do what is needed for us to move through this pain that you are feeling. And slowly began to connect with him. And slowly he started sharing more and more about his pain, and we started crying more. We started feeling all these emotions and feelings together that he was too scared to feel because they were so big for himself that he needed someone to hold it with him. As a 6-year-old, it's just too much for him. So now I got the beautiful honor of feeling this with him and holding these pains with him and these emotions. And we went into depths of fear, and we went into pain. We went into physical pain. We went into shame, still working on shame, still sitting with shame. These beautiful things that we built together. And that's when I believe I told you in the last episode about me meeting him on the bridge and holding each other. That was the climax point of it. It was beautiful. So the wildest part about it was seeing that these butterfly feelings that I would get regarding women, thinking that they were my soulmate, was actually a trauma reaction. It was actually me being triggered because these women were women that weren't actually going to be able to see me and give me what I needed. So I was getting this energy from them that reminded me of my mother, and I would think, oh, this is the person that's going to replace that need in me that I wasn't getting. And that blew my mind. That absolutely blew my mind. So the way that I've been approaching it now is when that feeling comes, that is a signal to me that this is not actually a healthy thing. This is something that I should really be curious about and hold much more respectfully and maybe even take a step back and appreciate that I have this feeling in me that feels really good. That's actually a warning signal. And so what I'm really looking out for now in regards to a relationship is the woman that doesn't give me these explosive firework butterfly feelings, but the woman that I connect with, that there's a energy with, but the one that I feel actually a little uncomfortable and a little on my edge with, because that I feel is the thing that I avoid, because that's not the easy escape from discomfort, escape from pain road. That's the, oh, I have something really beautiful to learn here from. There's something here that wants me to grow. And there's probably more of a healthy dynamic going on here, even though it feels more uncomfortable because I've never gone that route before. I've avoided that. I've avoided that pathway because of the fear of not being good enough for it, quite honestly, of not being able to meet it, of not being strong enough to be in to be in a relationship with someone who's actually going to see me and hold me to being me. I'm really excited about that. And I look forward to delving into that when it comes my way. Oh, let me give it a second. Whew. I'm going to see if I missed out on anything seen there. If I missed out on anything being said. It was such a beautiful journey. It was as all really great healing journeys are. Beautiful, intense, uncomfortable, enlightening, eye-opening. So many emotions, so many tears, so much screaming and yelling. Oh, it actually, when I relate the healing journey experience of all those things and all the things you have to feel and all the things that you experience in order to get to the other side and pop out into a new perspective and a new experience of life, it makes me want even more to follow the path of, I see that there's a connection with this person and I feel the discomfort in that because I know that that's where the growth is. So I am fully inviting that into my life. And I look forward to the opportunity to grow in that experience. Okay, I'm going to leave you here with that thought. Thank you so much for listening. It was really great to share and explore that out loud with you. I would love it if you have any thoughts or feelings about this. You can share with me on Instagram at A Little Room for Healing, or leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That would be great. And if you feel inclined to throw any ratings down on the podcast, that would be amazing. And share with friends and family if you feel like it'll be moving for someone. I'm really I really have a desire for more interaction with you all. So please reach out or follow me on Insta. Let's chat and I want to invite you to make a little room for healing in your lives. And I look forward to the next time.
Thanks for making a little room for my podcast. I'd love to be a part of your journey too. Follow me on Instagram at A Little Room for Healing for news, updates, offerings, and connection. To book a session with me, go to www.alittleroomforhealing.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, follow the link at the bottom of the episode description. Have a beautiful day.